35 years, the Forth and Clyde Canal sat disconnected from the Union Canal. Two waterways separated by 35 meters of elevation, with no practical way to cross. Locks had been demolished in 1933. By 2002, engineers unveiled something that had never existed before: a rotating boat lift, balanced so precisely that turning it costs the same energy as boiling 8 kettles of water. Stand on the lower basin and watch a gondola carrying 600 tons of water, and whatever boats float inside it rotate in 4 minutes without spilling a drop. The geometry does the work. Scotland reconnected 84 kilometers of canal with a machine that looks borrowed from a fever dream. The Magdeburg water bridge carries ships over a river, not under, over. Completed in 2003, after a construction pause forced by German reunification, it spans the Elbe and connects 2 major canals that previously had no direct link. What Paukos Sabin is that the bridge holds 70,000 tons of water at all times. Yet the load on the structure barely changes when a 1,000-ton barge crosses because the vessel simply displaces its own weight in water. The canal doesn't get heavier. Archimedes applied at industrial scale. Without it, cargo ships rerouted 12 extra kilometers around Magdeburg. That detour, multiplied across thousands of annual crossings, was the real engineering problem. The sandstone pillars of Zhangjiajie rise over 300 meters straight up. No slope, no gradual climb, just vertical rock draped in mist. Building any access meant working against pure cliff face in a national park where drilling restrictions were strict and helicopter logistics were brutal. The solution was a double-deck elevator bolted directly onto the rock, carrying 50 passengers per cabin, covering 326 meters in under 2 minutes. What surprises most visitors isn't the height, it's the noise. The mechanism hums louder than expected, and the glass cabin vibrates slightly on the ascent. The cliff doesn't feel distant. It's centimeters away, moving past your face the entire ride up. Lisbon had one bridge over the Tagus. by the mid-1990s, it was handling traffic volumes it was never designed for. Daily gridlock, hours lost, an entire southern region functionally isolated during peak hours. The 1998 World Expo created a deadline. Portugal built a 17.2-kilometer crossing in under 3 years, the longest bridge in Europe at the time. But the real constraint was invisible. The Tagus estuary sits in one of Europe's most seismically active zones. Engineers designed each of the 6 main pylons to move independently during an earthquake. What most drivers never notice is that the roadway curves slightly upward at the center, enough to account for the Earth's curvature across its full length. The Elbphilharmonie cost 789 million euros, roughly 10 times its original budget. It sits on top of a 1960s brick warehouse in Hamburg's Old Port District, the new glass structure rising above the existing building like a wave frozen mid-break. Inside the main concert hall, 10,000 individually shaped acoustic panels cover every surface. Each one is a different size, calculated to scatter sound so precisely that every seat in the hall receives the same audio experience. But here's what the budget controversy obscures. Hamburg's most complained about detail isn't the cost. It's the escalator, a 82-meter curved tube that takes you from street level to the plaza. First-timers always stop halfway up, disoriented. It feels longer than it looks from outside. The Gateway Arch in St. Louis is exactly as wide as it is tall, 192 meters in both directions. That's not aesthetic symmetry. It's structural necessity. The catenary curve distributes the arch's own weight so efficiently that the walls at the base are only 3 meters thick, despite supporting 17,146 tons of stainless steel above. The consequence of that precision. The tram system built inside the legs to carry visitors to the top had to fit within an impossibly narrow envelope. The pod cars tilt as they climb, like something between a Ferris wheel and an elevator. Most visitors expect a standard lift. What they get instead feels slightly wrong, which, it turns out, is exactly what correct engineering looks like here. How do you carry a canal across a river valley 38 meters in the air in 1805 with no steel, no concrete, no modern surveying equipment? Thomas Telford's answer was cast iron troughs sealed with Welsh flannel and lead, sitting on hollow masonry pillars thin enough to flex slightly in high wind. The trough is 3.4 meters wide. Narrow boats fit with centimeters to spare on each side. But here's the detail that stops people cold. There is no towpath railing on the downstream side. Nothing between the boat and a 38-meter drop into the Dee Valley below. Horses that pulled the boats along the path were blindfolded before crossing. Not a precaution, standard procedure. St. Petersburg spent decades refusing skyscrapers. The city's historic skyline laws were among Europe's strictest. Nothing could interrupt the flat horizon that made the Winter Palace and the Nova River read as one continuous composition. Then, Gazprom needed a headquarters. The original site was central, visible, and immediately controversial. Preservationists sued. UNESCO issued warnings. The location shifted 30 kilometers north to the Gulf of Finland shore, where no protected sightlines applied. What opened in 2019 was 462 meters of twisted glass, the tallest building in Europe at the time. From the historic center, on clear days, it appears above the roofline anyway. The horizon, the laws protected now, has a needle rising through it regardless. The elevators in Taipei 101 pressurize as they climb, like a plane cabin. Your ears pop somewhere around the 60th floor. Taiwan sits on the junction of 3 tectonic plates, and when construction began in 1999, engineers knew the building would face both typhoons and earthquakes within its first decade. It did. A 6.8 magnitude quake struck during construction in 2002, killing 5 workers when a crane fell. The finished tower sways deliberately, up to 60 centimeters in either direction, controlled by a 660-ton steel pendulum suspended between floors 87 and 92. Visitors can see it. It hangs there, visible behind glass, slowly moving. Most expect a machine. It looks more like a planet. The original Sunshine Skyway Bridge across Tampa Bay had a problem nobody wanted to say out loud. Ships kept hitting it. A freighter struck one section in 1980, dropping 365 meters of roadway into the water. "35 people died. The replacement, opened in 1987, was engineered around that specific failure. Its concrete pylons designed to absorb a direct hit from a fully loaded tanker without collapsing. Protective concrete islands called dolphins were built around each pier. But the human cost nobody mentions is this. The bridge became one of the most frequented suicide sites in the United States. Crisis phones were installed at intervals along the railing. The view from the top is genuinely extraordinary. Both things are true simultaneously. Hoover Dam contains enough concrete to pave a two-lane highway from San Francisco to New York. That number gets quoted often. What it actually means is harder to picture. The concrete was so massive that pouring it continuously would have generated enough internal heat to keep it cracking for over a century. Engineers solved this by running 582 miles of cooling pipes through the structure, pumping refrigerated water through the blocks as they cured, section by section, for 2 years. The implication nobody foresaw was geological. Lake Mead's weight, 37 trillion liters at capacity, measurably depressed the Earth's crust beneath it. The surrounding land sank. Small earthquakes followed. The dam didn't just reshape the river. It reshaped the ground it stands on. Jean Nouvel spent years studying a single geological formation, the desert rose, a crystal that grows in arid sand when water evaporates and leaves mineral disks fused at odd angles. He then built a museum out of 539 interlocking concrete disks, some 87 meters in diameter, arranged so that no two intersections repeat. The building wraps around the former palace of Sheikh Abdullah bin Jassim Al Thani, who ruled Qatar in the early 20th century. What visitors don't expect is the interior logic. The disks create corridors that feel accidental, almost geological. You don't walk through galleries. You move through something that behaves like a landscape. The architecture doesn't illustrate Qatar's story. It physically performs it. Milan's Porta Nuova district was a flat, post-industrial gap in the city fabric. Useful land, but visually dead, sandwiched between a historic center that resisted towers and a municipal government that wanted density without sacrificing green space. The constraint was almost contradictory. Stefano Boeri's answer was 2 residential towers carrying 900 trees, 5,000 shrubs, and 11,000 ground cover plants across their balconies, the equivalent of 30,000 square meters of forest, vertical. What the photographs don't convey is the maintenance reality. A team of arborists abseil the facades twice a year, suspended between the 26th and 27th floors, pruning trees that have no business being at that altitude. The plants are doing fine. The logistics are quietly extraordinary. The Yavuz Sultan Selim Bridge across the Bosphorus carries both a motorway and a high-speed railway on the same deck, the first bridge in the world to combine both at that scale. The cause was purely geometric. The northern Bosphorus narrows just enough at that crossing point to make a single span viable. But the terrain on both shores drops sharply, demanding towers of 322 meters to achieve the necessary clearance. Those towers are the tallest bridge towers ever built. The consequence was political as much as structural. Turkey now has 3 bridges connecting Europe and Asia across the same strait, each one built by a different government, each one carrying the name of a sultan. The infrastructure is also a history lesson. Why did it take until 1893 to cut a canal through 6 kilometers of Greek rock that separates 2 seas? The Romans tried. Nero himself broke ground in 67 AD, using 6,000 Jewish prisoners as labor, before abandoning the project when a revolt pulled him back to Rome. The geology was the real problem. The isthmus sits on a seismic fault, and the limestone walls required near vertical cuts of 79 meters, which no ancient technology could stabilize. When Greek engineers finally completed it with French financing, the canal was already commercially obsolete, too narrow for the cargo ships of 1893. Today, it handles mostly tourist vessels. Standing on the bridge above it, looking straight down those sheer walls into the water, the drop feels personal, ancient, and unresolved.